Okay, our political culture lecture 3. We'll start off. We ended with political parties. We'll start off right now with elections and what it takes to those qualifications. We'll first look at elections and what each state, what you need to be first to qualify to take part in an election. And the first thing is you need to be a U.S. citizen, whether born or naturalization. The naturalization process takes a while to test. We did that earlier in the last lecture. Then you need to be 18, so most of you in the room are not able to vote because you are not 18 years old. The next one, you need to be resident of the state. I can't vote for New York because I am not a resident of the state of New York, so that's one of the reasons why I cannot vote there. And then legally registered to vote. Those are all qualifications of what you need to be in order to vote. The elections and the historical things that have gone with that, like your PowerPoint's going to say, is with voting before it was only white males for the Civil Rights Movement, or for the Civil War. Then after the Civil War, it's still typically only white males. You have the 15th Amendment. African Americans have the right to vote, but things were put in the way of that, so they couldn't be successful, like poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and things of that nature. They couldn't do it. If you couldn't do that stuff, then you couldn't vote. So those things were put in place to block African Americans from voting. Another amendment that helped to make elections easier for people was the 17th Amendment, direct election of senators rather than elected by state legislators. People did not have a say in who was elected a senator. It was a state legislator thing, where the state of California, the legislators would vote on our senators. By the way, who are our two senators in the state of California? Can you name them? Can you name our two senators? Can you name a representative? Can you name our Chief Justice? Not in California, in the judicial system. The next thing, we had 19th Amendment, women's right to vote, the suffrage movement. Again, if you want to have fun with your sisters, people, ask them if they want to end women's suffrage, which is ending women's right to vote. Those videos are all over YouTube if you want to show your family. They're fun to watch. Then you have the Indian Citizens Act, which Indians are now citizens and can vote. Then the 24th Amendment, which bans the poll taxes set in place by the 15th Amendment to discourage African Americans from voting. Then you have the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which protects the voting rights of African Americans and does away with other discriminatory practices in voting. Then you have 26th Amendment, very important to you, lowers voting age to 18. And in order to make registration easier and the whole process of voting easier, because many people do not turn out for elections, don't ask me why, you have the Motor Voter Act, which makes it easier to vote. So those are all things in relation to voting. And let's take a look real quick, if it lets us. Nice. Apparently we are freezing. Perfect. The computer keeps freezing. I don't know why. But anyway, let's take a look at elections, what type of elections there are. There's presidential election, highest voter turnout. Know that for our test, that the presidential election is the highest voter turnout. It's every 4 years. We're in one right now. Who gets elected? President, vice president, all members of the House of Representatives. Third of the Senate and some state and local officials. Dan Defoe, City Council's local official that I told you I'm working with. And then school board, another example that's going on in Eureka School District. The second type is midterm elections. Occurs every 2 years, or even number of years between presidential elections. A third of the Senate gets elected. All members of the House and most state governors and some state and local officials. Again, City Council, those kind of things would get elected. Then you have off-year elections. The midterm would be the second highest. Off-year elections held in odd number of years. County officials, nobody cares. Literally, I don't think that many people vote. Those that, like we learned about the different types of publics, the mass doesn't care. The elite would care, and the informed public would care, but the mass wouldn't care. During elections, what are the different types of elections? And the different types of elections are you have the primary, which was held this last year, an election in which voters determine their political party nominees for an elective office. And there's two types of primaries. There's open and closed. An open primary allows voters to vote in a primary election. Allows all voters is the key word. I don't know if I said all, but allows all voters. What it means by that is if I can, an open primary, let's say California had an open primary, and I have the potential to be a Democrat and vote in the Republican presidential primary. That has positives and negatives. Positives, everybody gets to say. The negative is I can hijack the presidential primary or a race and just vote for the person I know who's not going to win. But an open one, anybody can vote, doesn't matter the party, on what's going on. A closed primary, only those that are registered a certain party can vote in that election. What is California? Are we open or are we closed? Then you have nonpartisan primaries used to narrow down the field to nonpartisan contests. Example, school board or city council. Those don't really happen around here. Then you have blanket primaries. Voters can pick and choose one candidate from each office, any party's primary list. And you have caucus, closed meeting of people with one political party who will select candidates and delegates. Example, Iowa caucus presidential elections. Very odd how it happens in this room, but it's there. If you have more understanding, look it up. And if you still have questions, I can explain further the caucus. Just a different kind of primary, just a really odd election kind of thing. Iowa does it just to be first. It is the whole horse race mentality that we're learning about. Another thing I wanted to quickly talk to you about is use these notes. And let's take a look at reasons for low voter turnout. And a lot of the first reason is going to be registration. Remember I told you the motor voter bill, it's called the National Voter Registration Act 1993, was designed to increase lower voter turnout. It makes it easier. People say the registration process is too difficult. People are lazy. You don't believe me? I mean, just seriously, people are lazy. You know that. So what this does, it allows people to register when renewing license or car. So you go to the DMV, just hang out there. It's a good time. And just go to register, people watch, just like going to Walmart. Nothing against Walmart, but it's just amazing for people watching. B, various public offices also offer registration forms. Post office, things of this nature. You can even register online. I mean, Rock the Vote, those things. Require states to allow registration by mail. So all those things were made in order to make the registration process easier. That's a reason for low voter turnout, number one. Number two, ballot fatigue. Excessive number of offices measures on the ballot, so the voters are fatigued in getting through entire ballot. Take a look at Prop 30 and Prop 32. How is it going to affect you, either positive or negative? That's an example. There's so many props, so many different things you don't know. You know how people get elected, though, the name recognition. It's a big one. Excessive number of elections. We have too many elections. That's simple. Type of election, general election turnout, primary election turnout, very low. Presidential election, legislation turnout, presidential election, the highest turnout, national election turnout, state election turnout, different elections, different turnout. Most important, presidential election, the highest election turnout. 5, difficulties in obtaining absentee ballots. Makes it difficult, people aren't going to be around. Ooh, look at 6. Young people tend to have the lowest voter turnout. It was ratified, turnout naturally declined because more people are able to vote, less informed, and young people they don't care about politics as much because they don't think it relates to them. Political reasons, lack of political efficacy. People don't think that politics, or that they make a difference in politics, so they're not going to vote because they don't think their say matters. Dissatisfaction with candidates, parties, and politics in general. So why vote? The system's broke. Lack of a strong two-party competition. There's no third party. Without a strong third party, those two parties maybe you don't have the same ideology. So why vote? Weakness of parties in mobilizing voters. That means they don't get voters to do that. Who votes? Who cares? Who doesn't? Characteristics of those likely to vote. Level of educational achievement. Those that are smarter tend to vote. The greatest predictor of indicating a voter. A predictor of voting. Jeez Louise. That cuts across other factors. High levels of education achievement, regardless of race, sex, income, are more likely to vote than those with lower levels of education. Income, those with higher levels are more likely to vote than those with lower levels. Age, older voters vote, younger voters don't, because again, race, whites are more likely to vote than African Americans, who are more likely to vote than Hispanic Americans or Mexican Americans. And socioeconomic status, again, plays some role that we factored out, but again, it depends upon which study you look at there. Sex, and the women have lower voter turnouts than men, but that's kind of changed, especially with the soccer mom, Bill Clinton. And does low voter turnout matter? It does, but it doesn't represent, because low voter turnout doesn't represent what we believe as Americans, or the nation believes. And the problem is you get what's known as class bias, because older white Americans, those with a lot of money, are voting. Those are the ones making all the decisions. Those are the ones the politicians are pandering to, so nobody cares about any other social economic class. The rebuttal, some studies show, which means the counter-argument, that although non-voters are demographically different, they are not that politically different from the voters, and would not vote in a significantly different way than those who do vote. They just don't, for one reason or another. Other forms of political participation that exist out there, you can just take a look at that. These are some things. Think of Doomed Democracy Project, what we talked about today in class. Alrighty? Have a great day. Rest of your day. I'll see you guys tomorrow.